Our presidential contenders series continues. Former New York Governor George Pataki joins me on set in an exclusive. We'll hit all the issues: immigration, the Iran deal, Planned Parenthood, and more. Later, his quest for freedom inspired the world. My exclusive interview with Chinese dissident, attorney, and human rights advocate Chen Guangcheng. And finally, what is the future of marriage and religious freedom in the wake of the Supreme Court's gay marriage ruling? Author of Truth Overruled, Ryan Anderson joins us. The World Over Live begins right now.
Now, from Washington, D.C., Raymond Arroyo.
A warm welcome to all of you joining us in the United States and the world over. Governor George Pataki, Chen Guangcheng, and Ryan Anderson are all straight ahead. If you'd like to comment on tonight's show, or if you have a question, I'll be live tweeting throughout. Find me on Twitter at Raymond Arroyo, or you can email me at worldover@EWTN.com. Here's the brief. News from the world over this week. Pope Francis and the Vatican are continuing their global warming fight. This week in Rome, the Holy Father was joined by mayors from around the world at a Vatican-hosted meeting on climate change. In a final declaration, they affirmed that climate change is man-made and stopping it is a moral imperative. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio directly blamed the 44 deaths during Hurricane Sandy on global warming, while pledging sharp reductions in emissions. California Governor Jerry Brown warned the Synod Hall audience against the naysayers.
We have fierce opposition and blind inertia, and that opposition is well financed. Hundreds of millions of dollars going into propaganda, into falsifying the scientific record, bamboozling people of every country.
During the meeting, the Pope connected the growing global crisis of sex trafficking to man-made carbon emissions. In fact, the Vatican Symposium was called Modern Slavery and Climate Change, the Commitment of the Cities. In his remarks, Pope Francis said we cannot separate care for the environment from the social context, the social life of mankind. At least one Vatican official is not joining the climate change bandwagon, breaking his silence on the matter since becoming the Holy See's finance chief. Cardinal Pell said in a recent interview that the Church has no particular expertise in science and has no mandate from the Lord to pronounce on scientific matters. Cardinal Pell was commenting on Pope Francis's landmark eco-encyclical Laudato Si. He did offer some praise for the papal teaching. Pell told the Financial Times that the Holy Father beautifully sets out our obligations to the environment. Before coming to the Vatican, the former Cardinal Archbishop of Sydney was an outspoken global warming skeptic. Cardinal Pell noted at the time that those who embrace man-made climate change have created a new religion, so much so that if anyone were to question, quote, what amounts to a green fundamentalist faith, it would be tantamount to heresy, end quote. And in advance of his visit to America, Pope Francis's approval ratings have hit a new low. A Gallup poll finds that 59% of Americans view the Pope favorably. That's down from 76% last year. In 2014, the Holy Father enjoyed a more than 8-to-1 favorable to unfavorable ratio. That number is now down to less than 4-to-1. The Pope's favorability has dropped across the spectrum, especially among those who identify themselves as conservative. This is the first time that a majority of conservatives do not view Pope Francis favorably. Some are attributing the falling approval ratings to his recent pronouncement on the environment and economic redistribution. Though his popularity has fallen among self-identified liberals as well. Overall, Pope Francis's numbers are close to Pope Benedict's, but below those of Pope St. John Paul II. After a federal appeals court ruled against them earlier this month, the Little Sisters of the Poor are appealing their case to the Supreme Court to avoid the federal contraceptive mandate. If the sisters find no relief from the High Court, they could face crippling fines of up to $2.5 million a year, about 40% of their annual budget. The Supreme Court is expected to consider the petition later this year. More trouble for Planned Parenthood as a second undercover video has surfaced showing yet another top official discussing compensation for aborted baby parts. Dr. Mary Gatter, a member of Planned Parenthood's Medical Directors Council, appears in the latest video released by the Center for Medical Progress. In it, she is seen negotiating the price of fetal organs. At one point, she hesitates to offer a price, saying she's afraid to get lowballed if she throws a number out. On camera, Gatter discusses per specimen prices ranging from $50 to $75 to $100. Later in the video, Gatter pledges that she will ask abortionists to use a, quote, less crunchy technique to preserve desired body parts. Numerous state and federal investigations are underway. Planned Parenthood is again claiming that there's nothing in the videos to suggest any violation of law or improper activity. 50 senators have signed onto a measure to defund Planned Parenthood nationally. The abortion giant currently receives more than $500 million annually from taxpayers. House Democrats have also called for an investigation into the Center for Medical Progress, the group that produced the undercover videos. This week's video follows an initial one released on July 14th. It drew new, widespread attention to Planned Parenthood's longtime practice of procuring abortion fetal tissue for research. And Capitol Hill hearings are underway to vet a recent Iran nuclear deal struck with the U.S. and 5 other nations. On Thursday, Secretary of State John Kerry led a delegation of administration officials to defend the deal before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee.
The alternative to the deal that we have reached is not what I've seen some ads on TV suggesting disingenuously. It isn't a, quote, better deal, some sort of unicorn arrangement involving Iran's complete capitulation. That is a fantasy, plain and simple.
Congress has until September 17th to approve, disapprove, or take no action at all regarding the deal. With Republicans in control of Congress, the White House is looking to shore up enough Democratic support to block a veto override. Ohio Governor John Kasich became the 16th Republican candidate to enter the presidential race on Tuesday. He immediately headed to the early primary state of New Hampshire for campaign events. Kasich positioned himself as a change agent with executive, legislative, and business experience who can get results. He's widely credited for the federal budget surpluses negotiated during President Clinton's second term. He was the House Budget Chairman at the time. Kasich is starting near the bottom of most of the polls, but he says he sees a potential for an opening in a field where no candidate is dominant. And more Christian kidnappings by jihadists. This time in Libya, a group tied to ISIS has claimed responsibility for the abductions of 3 men this past week, one each from Ghana, Nigeria, and Egypt. Images of the men shown bound and blindfolded were released on July 18th, along with photographs of another man crucified by ISIS militants in Sirte. Libyan media is reporting that the man was killed for his support of Libya Dawn, an ISIS or anti-ISIS coalition. Sirte, located on Libya's central coast, is now almost completely controlled by Islamic State militants. And a major crackdown on human rights activists is underway in China. This latest wave of persecution involves the arrest, interrogation, and in some cases, the disappearance of over 200 attorneys and other human rights workers across China. The roundup began on July 9th when prominent human rights lawyer Wang Yu was detained. Her whereabouts are still unknown. Meanwhile, the communist regime continues to persecute Christian churches. Even the government-registered Catholic Patriotic Association and its Protestant counterpart. The groups have protested the removal of at least 1,200 crosses atop church buildings throughout China. More on this with Chen Guangchang in our next segment. And finally, Pope Francis has appointed a familiar face as a new bishop. Father Robert Barron was among 3 priests appointed auxiliary bishops for the Archdiocese of Los Angeles. Besides his appearances on EWTN, Father Barron is probably best known as the host of the documentary series Catholicism. He has also served as rector of Mundelein Seminary in Chicago. At a press announcement in LA this week, the bishop-elect credited his mentor, the late Cardinal Francis George, with teaching him the importance of evangelizing the culture. Pope Francis also named Monsignor Joseph Brennan and Monsignor David O'Connell as auxiliaries. Both are priests of the Archdiocese of LA. The new bishops will assist Archbishop Jose Gomez in shepherding over 4 million Catholics in the country's largest diocese. We wish them well.